Etapu, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, Haroon Nefer. This is Qesankh Peru with another exciting video for you. And in this video, well, hold on one second. I have to take a look at something real quick. I want to make sure my connection is good and it doesn't look like it's all that good. That's interesting. But anyway, I digress. This is Qesankh Peru with another exciting video for you. And in this video, we're going to talk about the 3 divisions of man/woman. But before I do that, I want you to hit the like button on this video. If this is your first time to my channel, hit the subscribe button to get notifications on when I go live and when I upload recorded videos. Also, if you want to know more about my spiritual teachings, you can be a Patreon supporter for as little as $1, $2, $5, $20 per month. It's up to you, and you can cancel at any time. You'll get exclusive access to instructional videos on the esoteric, videos that teach you how to meditate, proper breathing exercises, how to invoke spirits for your protection, how to do a money ritual. And if you are an Acero level supporter, you'll get all the oracle readings for free. So become a Patreon supporter again. You can cancel at any time. And lastly, I want you to subscribe to any one of my free ebooks. You can scroll down below, click on the links, and download the ebook right away and read more about my spiritual teachings. And one more thing, share this video with family and friends so we can get the revolution started. So, Haroon Nefer, Grand Rising, may Buddha bless you. We got an interesting subject to talk about today. Excuse me, my voice is a little hoarse. That's because this got caught in my throat. I was eating these vegan cookies I love so much. Now, it is interesting that when I was a young child, I was always intuitive. So much so that I kind of knew truth, ma'at. And one of the very first things were that I knew that my parents were doing things that were wrong. Even though I had not been taught that they were wrong, I just intuitively knew it, such as smoking, drinking, cursing, hanging out with low vibrational people. And a lot of that also came from me being an empath, reading the energy of the room, reading the energy of the people they would associate with. I knew that it was not good. But as a child, there was nothing I can do. But as I got older, it became stronger, that emotion. In knowing that there were certain people in life that were engaged in negative behavior. It wasn't until I went to spiritual teachings into the temple that I really started to understand this. See, in our society, it's just taught that you indulge in your emotions, express yourself, be who you are. Now, those are dangerous sentiments that could lead your life to disaster. But even though I knew that, what I didn't realize was that there were divisions to our makeup and who we are. So in a sense, not everybody was equal. You know, we talk about equality and all that. And one has to question if you want to be equal to those who are doing wrong on this planet. because we don't look at people and have a distinction between groups of people and the behavior that they're engaged in. We group them up in terms of like humanity or leftists or conservatives. But these are very generalized terms. And we tend to paint these people with a broad brush. And that's not necessarily correct. It's maybe a step in a right direction, a poor step in the right direction. And what I mean by that is there is a need to understand the divisions of people and their makeup. See, when we have people listening to rap music and so many people are into that, and they look at hip hop as their way of life and as their religion in a sense, you got to say that that's a category of people. Or we can sometimes use the nomenclature of a niche of people. When people are into something and they're following a leader, we may call it a cult. Jim Jones. Of course, the people in the cult don't refer to it as that. But the one thing I knew, even as a child, is that I was not equal to everybody else, that I was different. And I'm not looking at things from a narcissistic point of view, because I didn't have delusions of grandeur. I just knew that certain behavior was not for me. I knew that smoking and drinking was not for me. I knew it was wrong. No one had to teach that to me. This is why it was intuitive. In fact, it was the direct opposite when I was growing up. It was engaged as a normal practice. When I went to family and friend events. And I was therefore seen as an outcast as I got older and I didn't engage in these things, as same as drugs. So we must understand that we are not all equal. And it was the ancient Egyptians, the Kemetic people, the Kamau, who sought to codify this, who sought to put people in this particular groups so we can understand them better. You watch my videos, you'll see that I kind of group people in the term of Sahu, meaning people who operate by the animal spirit. And that's what our ancient Kemetic people or ancient Kemetic ancestors referred to them as. I once dated a young girl who was emotionally unstable and super jealous. Put those two together and you got a bad mixture. She could not stop and think about something logically. Her reactions were always hyper emotionalism. And there was nothing I could do to convince her that I wasn't cheating on her, because her emotions were in the driver's seat. This is a Sahu person. This is the majority of people. And you see, even though our ancestors in their wisdom left behind information on categorizing people, we have yet to take that and adapt it. You see, the pimp pastor minister that stands up in the pulpit is Sahu, and those in his congregation are sheeple, followers, being led by their emotions, but not by logical sense, because logically, if you were to read the Bible, you would know that it is basically a story filled with metaphors and allegories. not actual history. And the pimp pastor minister has been trained and schooled and knows how to push those emotional buttons within the masses of the Sahu people, therefore gaining a large congregation. This is why they prey upon women, because women are operated out of the right hemisphere of the brain, which is the seat of emotions. But our society doesn't teach you the divisions of the spirit, the divisions of the makeup of who we are. Because once you start to understand that we're not all equal and that there are some who are operating out of the lower aspect, which is the animal spirit Sahu, and that there are some who are operating out of the higher aspects, such as Tahuti, wisdom, or Jehuti, or Thaw, then we'll start to really see things clearly. Then we'll start to put in place real leaders who operate out of the Tahuti faculty and the Sekert faculty and the Oser faculty, the higher trigram of the Kemetic Port Neteru, the tree of life. We'll start to look at things in a radically different way and demand that Sahu people be removed from government. But we haven't gotten to that point as of yet to understand this division of the spirits. And then we have those that run around and tout how well they're doing in life. It pains me every time I see, for example, a young girl, age 14, African American, graduated with a master's at such a young age. And there's so much praise for her. When we should know she's an outlier. She does not represent the norm. And within a society, there will always be people who be born into that society readily adaptable. It also pains me to see a company that says after 40 years, so-and-so is the head of CBS or the head of HBO, an African-American woman, which tells me that you have spent 40 years of racism and filtering out people of color. So I don't give praise to this woman who has become the head of whatever company, GE, because I look and say, well, what have you did for those 40 years? Why wasn't someone of African American descent or ADOS put in that position long time ago? We're looking at diversity, and now we have commercials that have now more so-called minorities in them. I remember a time when I used to watch TV when I was very young, and not giving away my age, when you could not find a person of color in a commercial, not one. Al Sharpton even protested on Madison Avenue about this lack of representation and how these companies were losing money by not targeting and appealing to people of color. And now all that has changed and everybody's like jumping happy. But we have to remember that these advertising agencies and these media outlets have spent years, decades discriminating. Nothing to be excited about, nothing to praise them about. Disney's like, every time they come out with a Marvel, what is it, Star Wars or something of that nature, whatever movie they come out with, they're always hyper emphasizing the fact that they have minority characters. And I have not forgotten your history, Disney. We just don't wake up one morning and forget all of the discriminatory practices you engaged in since Walt Disney started his company. Because only the Sahu man could create a culture that was racist and sexist. And if we start to adhere to this division of the spirit by our ancestors, we will now see that there is a difference, and that we can also look at an objective to achieve. Like, I don't want to be a Sahu man. I want to be an Eb man. I want to be a Ba man. We therefore have an objective to reach for. So these people running around, blinging out, bling, bling, flossing, talking about how much money they're making, how well they're doing, are not great achievers. Hetepu Mitchell, they're not great achievers. They just found a way to fit into this society and to make it work for them. In fact, let me bring this up. It was Jita Krishnamurti, I'm maybe mispronouncing that said it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. So you telling the fact that you have got a record deal, movie deal, head CEO of this company does not mean much to God, because you are still Sahu. Does that make sense? Now, in order to understand this and this division of the spirit, we have to look at the codification that our ancestors left us to go by. And that is the Portnet Teru, which is the only system of codifying behaviors. And if you see here the tree of life, the Portnet Teru, and I'll make this bigger. Okay. We have the lower aspect, which is Oser, Sekert. I shouldn't say lower, let me correct, the higher aspect, Oser, Sekert, and Tehuti. And that's the higher trigram. And the middle portion, which is Haru, Harukahuti, Ma'at. And the lower aspect, Sebek, Heheru, Oset, and Geb. Now, the lower trigram is what most of the world or our society operates by: Geb, Oset, Sebek, and Heteru. And it is clear when you're operating at this lower aspect that you are operating based on your emotions. And it is clear that when you operate out of the higher trigram, you are operating on a higher, in I hate to say intellectual level, but a higher spiritual level, because intellect belongs to Sebek, by the way, down here below. Intuition belongs here to Tehuti, up above. So we see from this tree of life that our ancestors have studied the division of the spirit and have codified it in this tree of life. so that there's no guesswork when you're meeting people or groups of people as to how they operate, their feelings and sentiments. And most of the time, these individuals are Sahu. You see, the entire story of Asar and Aset, or the Assyrian drama, was so important in ancient Egypt, Kemet, that it went through a number of iterations, but remained essentially the same to be taught. Because the idea was that Haru, or Horus, was fighting Set, or Satan, so he can win the battle and become king, the rightful king of Egypt, Kemet. Now, Set was not really a physical being. Set represented your animal self. Set represented what can happen if you allow your emotions to lead you. So Haru's battle was to fight the animal spirit within him, to subdue it. That's what the story was about. And all of the other characters in the story, his mother Isis, Aset, his father Osir, or Osiris, pertained to that tree of life, that Portna Teru, different on different levels and aspects. Aset representing the lower trigram, and Osir representing the higher trigram next to God. Amen. Because the goal was for you to rise to become Osir, not being influenced by your Sahu emotions. Do you understand? But how society doesn't codify this and teach it to us, so we think everybody is the same. No, I'm sorry. I'm not the same as Little Shorty, the rapper. I'm not the same as Kamala Harris. Because I seek higher wisdom and knowledge. I seek to rise above my animal emotions, Sahu, or animal spirit. I practice Min Eben Ankh and Ma'at every day. I am Ma'at Karu, true of heart. But let us get more into this animal spirit and see what it's really about. And for that, we'll go to the good book, the Meduna Tear by Ra'u Nafa Ahmed. And let us go to page 105, which is the chapter on a cosmological guide to the three types of men. Here we have the codification, three types. A brief look at the subject from this perspective will reveal the following outline of the various types of people. 1, people who are controlled by the emotional and sensuous being, that's the 10th sphere, which is Geb, by the way, and who only know what they are taught by others, and whose mental perception is limited to the external and concrete side of things because of their lives are full of contradictions. They are devoid of understanding. As this type of man has not risen above the 5th division of the spirit, the Sahu, counting from the bottom, we shall refer to him as Sahu. Sahu man. Recall that the Sahu is the 5th division of the spirit. The masses or inferior men of the Chinese Taoism corresponded to this level. Now, Chinese codified it as well. They called it the inferior man. Number two, people who are able to rise above the influence of their emotional and sensual being. And although their knowledge is only limited to what they are taught, They are able to understand, think abstractly about the subjects that are taught to them. This is due to the fact that their mental faculties, spheres 4 through 6, we covered that, are able to perceive the abstractions that underline physical events. This enables them to avoid the contradictions that beset the previous type of man. As the soul qualities of this man or type of man originates in the ab part of the spirit, we shall refer to him as the ab man. They correspond to the superior men of Chinese Taoism. Chinese Taoism is predicated on Tehuti or Jehuti. They got the Tao from Tehuti. And finally, the third type. People who are able to intuit the knowledge needed to avoid and solve all problems that can face man. They also possess the ability to achieve such goals, influence physical events by manipulating their spiritual power through the use of hakao and visualization. Hakao meaning mantras. As this type of man has completed his or her evolution, we shall refer to him as Osair, an Osair person. Each of these three types of people represent a stage in man's evolution. So we see again that not everybody is equal, and that there are three divisions that make up humanity. So when you look at the crowds of people and you look at things people are doing, you can say, oh, that's an Ab man. That's an Osarian or Osair man. Oh, that's a Sahu man. And now you can say, my goal is to be an Osair man in this lifetime, which is a pretty damn good goal. When I see the rappers with them and their bling and their cars and their women, I say that is a Sahu man. And they should not be given places of influence in our society because they can influence the lower man. They can influence others. Lots of politicians in our government are Sahu men. Very few, if almost none, of the pimp pastor ministers are Ab men or Osarian. They're Sahu. But you think they are higher spiritual men because they have a large congregation, a nice church, and people praising them. That criteria does not mean that they have elevated their spirit. It just means that they're good at business tactics. They're very savvy at deceiving people and taking money. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I will feel better. I will it. So I want you to understand that we are following this path, are desirous of becoming an Osair person. That's why we're all gathered here on this spiritual journey. We want to leave behind the Sahu man, the Sahu woman. Trying to take my medicine. And what I tell individuals is that you may not reach the level of Osair in this lifetime, because God has given you an infinite number of incarnations to achieve the Osair level. But at least you're on the path, and you must pat yourself on the back and give yourself praise for that. because there are the Sahu men are caught up in the Sahu things and not even on the path. And some leapfrog from Sahu group to Sahu group. I was listening to one of Prince's women, I think it was Vanity, who had passed away. And in the later years before her death, she had talked about how she left that life with Prince behind and became a Christian, and now was celebrating Jesus. And every time she spoke, the word Jesus came out of her mouth, so much so that the interviewer had to check her. And he was right in what he said. He says, well, how do we know that you getting into this whole Christian and Jesus thing is just not another addiction? She said, well, if being addicted to Jesus is bad, I don't believe so. So she couldn't understand the fact that she was leapfrogging from one Sahu addiction to another Sahu addiction. The belief in an outside proxy person to save you. There's no one going to save you because you are God. See, when you reach that Osir level, you reach the state of Godness, where you have access to power to heal yourself and do things of that nature. Following another person is another Sahu move on the chessboard. It will not take you to freedom and liberation. Only Osir can do that. See, the failure of modern society and modern man, woman, is the fact that they lack the ability to think abstractly. What do I mean by that? I'm going to say something right now that's going to be one of the most important things I have ever said. And if you truly understand this, you will be able to solve the problem of the masses of the religions that are competing and fighting amongst each other. When you have the ability to think abstractly, and Western man has a problem with that because she can only think concretely, therefore the Bible becomes, they take it literally, it becomes a history book. But the ability to look at all the religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Catholicism, the ability to look at all these religions and think abstractly will bring you to the highest degree of knowledge and wisdom. Because when you can think abstractly, you can say, and here's an example, and I hope you understand this because this is very important. You can say that the names of these saviors is unimportant. Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, Osir. The names are unimportant. What is important is the process to getting to higher spiritual wisdom is the important part. So that person who can think abstractly can look at all those religions and extrapolate the process to reach a higher spiritual level. Do you understand? That person can look at Hinduism and Christianity and say, okay, both these religions, not concerned with titles, names, Shakti, Jesus, Moses, not concerned with that. Both of these religions make use of trance state to alter behavior. So, and then they would write on the board, trance state will alter human behavior. And then they will look at Osir, Muhammad, Jesus, and say, the goal at the top will be to achieve enlightenment in the metaphorical way that Jesus, Muhammad, and Krishna achieved it. And then they will go on further and extrapolate, well, the breathing technique that will help you quell the emotions is to breathe at rhythms of 3, 6, 7. And they would take these principles and say that all of these religions contain these principles because I've extrapolated from all these religions, and then say, this is the process to achieve enlightenment. The names and metaphors and allegories are meaningless. We don't need them because I have gone through all of them and taken out the actual process. Does that make sense? It is the same thing as going into a factory and starting your first day of work and being trained and then looking at the automated machines boxing up the product and the foreman, your boss, saying, okay, well, this is your first day, so I'm going to tell you we got phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And you go, okay, well, what's phase 1? Phase 1 is the product is put through the machine. Phase 2 is the product is wrapped. Phase 3, it goes to a UPS person. Now, the phase 1, the title phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 is not what you're after. It's the process that you're looking at. And you say, okay, I got it. Phase 1, product comes in. Phase 2, it's wrapped up. Phase 3 goes out. That's what you're concerned about is the process. But see, Sahu man, the concrete thinking man, can only look at the surface of things and say, my religion is better because it has a man called Jesus who walked the earth. No, my religion is better because it contained a man called Buddha. That's not the important thing. It's, well, how did these people reach the higher spiritual level? What exactly did they do? That's what we want to know. We want to know the process. And in order to identify the underlying process common among all of these religions, you have to be able to think abstractly. Does that make sense? Getting caught up in the concrete names, dates, stories will create problems because then you will be combatant with other religions. Well, my Savior walked on water and turned water into wine. Well, my Savior wrote the Tao and lived to be 800 years old. That's not important. What process did these individuals follow that led them to be a higher being? That's what you want to know. And that's the problem that we're having in our society. We are not looking at the process. We're only looking at the concrete things and getting caught up so much in that it is causing strife and conflict. Boom. That is the truth. You see, that is the truth. Do you understand? Do you understand? Do you understand? Now you can go to Jehovah's Witness Christians and say, I don't care about the names and the dates of your religious figures. Tell me the process that they use to reach the higher enlightenment, and let us find commonality in that. There's nothing wrong with worshiping Jesus. But when you sit in a church year after year, decade after decade, and never become a higher spiritual being, never become as good as the pimp pastor minister at the head of the pulpit, then something is wrong. If you're in church for 30 years, there's a point where you have to talk to your minister and sit down and have a come to Jesus moment and say, listen, I've been here for 30 years. When am I supposed to graduate? When am I supposed to become as good as you? And I've done the math, and I've given about 150,000 to this church over the course of 30 years. And I'm still a student. That's what's wrong in these Christian churches. And that's the game these pimp pastor ministers are playing on you to keep you tithing to them. If you get an opportunity, please donate to the channel. It would be appreciated. And also don't forget to hit the like button. We have to now ask these questions and look at life in a different way and say, you know what? There is a division as to how people are acting. There are people who are Sahu, and there are people who are Ab men. Why do we have Sahu in charge? That's right. That's right. Right. Be like Jesus, but y'all left the stories out about how he got there, enlightened and a healer. That's right. That's what's missing. The process by which he went through to get there. But they'll tell you, well, he's the son of God, so he already had these powers. No, 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 no. He is a metaphor for everyone to be like him. And I believe it was him that said, all these miracles and things that I perform, you can do even greater things. But how? That's the key. You understand? That is the key. And if you can find that out, you know, my teacher once came to me. Do I have the book here? Yeah, I do have the book here. I'm not going to grab it, but I'll just use another book as an example. And he was talking about this occult book where you can invoke these spirits that could help you do things, and you can command them to do things for you. It was a Hindu book, very rare book that contained the actual ritual. When he mentioned that in class, I went out and did as best as I could to find the book. And finally, I talked to someone, this is years ago, at Barnes & Nobles, and said, let me try and locate the book for you. And it took her 2 weeks, and she was able to locate the book. And she says, you would have to buy the whole volume set for $400. You couldn't just buy the one book. But she says, you know what? I'll order the volume set for you and take that one book out, and I will sell it to you. So she ordered it from India. It came in, and she pulled out that one book and held it for me and put the rest of the books on the shelves for sale. And I purchased that book, and I took it to my teacher 2 months later and said, hey, I got that book you were talking about. He says, oh, wow. And he flipped through it, and he read a passage from the book. And he goes, you see there? I said, what's that? He says, they're telling you to do this, but they're leaving out an important process. I said, really? He goes, yeah, they've left out the actual process. And he just said they typically do that so that the wrong people won't know how to perform that ritual. So I would need to further research that missing portion. Because typically when a great magician publishes books, they leave out their personal secrets. They're not going to divulge everything to the public. You have to become initiate under them to learn those secrets. So that book, in order for me to understand that process, I would probably have to fly to India and become a disciple. But you understand what I'm saying is that the process is missing. We're so concerned with the names and the stories. Oh, Noah built an ark. He took 2 of every animal. Why is that number 2 important? Why is the ark important? Now, I'm going to tell you this. The Bible is a great occultist book because it is full of occult practices, occult wisdom. It is based on astrotheology, the alignment of the stars. It is based on numerology. And if you're able to decipher things like Jesus is really Pisces, you can learn so much from it. But because these ministers in the churches only think concretely, you're not getting the real occult wisdom from the Bible. You're missing it. After I left priesthood, I picked up from this one occultist his book on the true occult meaning of all of the stories in the Bible. And it was such a wealth of knowledge, it blew my mind. And I said, underlying all these stories in the Bible are teachings of occult practices. And I was like, wow, this is deep. And it was so deep that I actually wanted to devote my life to divulging the secrets of the Bible. It literally blew my mind that much to where I wanted to go out in the world and teach about these hidden occult things in the Bible. But I found out that there were others who had published things of that nature and were attacked by the clergy. The careers ruined. Death threats. Because you are revealing the truth. And they cannot have that. You understand? That's why many don't go down that rabbit hole for fear of their lives. I was telling someone on a chat about why these things are not common knowledge and commonly taught. I said there are massive political ramifications and economic ramifications and religious ramifications for revealing this information. He says, well, I don't care. I want the truth. I'm like, no, brother. I want you to understand. Revealing this information will rock the foundation of the way we live. And there are people out there who have made their lives and careers off the political, economic, and religious ties to all of this. So much so that they're not going to give up their billion-dollar lives because you said we should just reveal the truth. They will take you out. Do you understand? Be aware of that. So it's not as easy as running around and revealing the truth. There is a proper way to do it, which is in increments, bite-sized, digestible pieces. It's not the masses of people that you have to worry about. I believe that they will take in what you're saying and digest it. But it is the oligarchy, the ruling elite, that you're threatening by revealing that truth on a massive scale. And you must understand that Sahu, man and woman, have emotional ties to their delusions. I'll say it again. They have emotional ties to their delusions. And waking them up from that delusion, pulling them out of the matrix, is going to disorient them in such a way that they will attack you and want to kill you. When I talk to members of the Nation of Islam, and I expose some of the things they're doing wrong, they threaten my life. But yet, when there is a story of the police shooting an innocent black man, or a white supremacist who lynched a black man and is still free today, they'll take no action against these individuals. But for someone like me revealing the truth of the foundation of the religion, I'm more dangerous than those white supremacists. So I want you to understand there is a right way to present truth. You have to be strategic. In the story of Asar and Set, before Horus could defeat Set, he had to go to Tahuti, the god of wisdom, to get the knowledge he could to defeat Set. So you're going to have to go to the oracles, which is Tahuti, before you start going out there and start talking about the truth. Because you don't want to risk your life unnecessarily. Yes, you are God. You are God in training. And the purpose of you is not to go out there and proselytize at this point. The purpose of this stage in your life is to grow and to learn. And by your energy vibration, you will affect people near and far. So there's no reason for you to go out there and preach or proselytize. You will change them through your energy alone. This is Qesankh Ma'at, son of Ma'at and Tahuti. Ma'at is the beautiful goddess Heteru. Until my next video, Amen Ra.